Yo, listen up, the skeleton is now complete, the sea monster's design can't be beat, bones all aligned, frame is on tight. So now it's time to add plasticine clay for our epic Mosasaurus display. Hello everyone, on this YouTube video today, I'm happy to say a marine reptile won't be just a skeleton today because I'm adding the plasticine clay, I do say. But before that can get done, we have a bit of skull painting fun. And as I sculpt away at the Jurassic World Rebirth Mosasaurus today, I'll be going over the incredible evolution, I say, of this amazing animal, you could say. During the late Cretaceous, large theropods dominated the land throughout the world rather uncontested. However, in the oceans and seas, there was a different set of rulers. And they ruled with vice grip like jaws, and were honestly one of the true behemoths of the Cretaceous period. And that is, of course, the Mosasaurs. They were marine reptiles that grew to giant sizes, and were highly adapted to thrive, and is probably one of the strongest dynasties the world has ever seen. And they did this at lightning speed, causing mayhem in every corner of the prehistoric Earth. However, in spite of becoming one of the lords of the late Cretaceous period, Mosasaurs came from quite humble beginnings. And many paleontologists believe that the sea monster's beginning all started from a family of semi-aquatic lizards, known as the Adaptations, which lived approximately 99 million years ago in Europe. They lived around the shallow marine environments of prehistoric Tethys Ocean, and probably spent most of their day on land. And unlike their eventual descendants, they were probably rather small, probably no more than a few meters or few feet in length, preying on small fish, lizards, and possibly amphibians. A very far cry from the diet of the eventual Mosasaurs. And for millions of years, the Adaptations remained relatively unchanged. When this group of lizards first emerged, they were limited by the fact that the waters had already not just one, but two dominant forces: the short-necked plesiosaur and the dolphin-like ichthyosaur. Both groups were diversified, and it should be mentioned both were very large, especially the ichthyosaurs, resulting in the top of the food chain for the ocean being very tight, offering very little space for newcomers. And because the ancestors for Mosasaur were much smaller, they could not compete. But luckily for them, they didn't necessarily have to, because approximately 90 million years ago, give or take a few, both plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs vanished. There has been many ideas on what happened. Some suggest that the two have been struggling for a long time, and recently one conjecture that has gained a lot of traction proposes that something caused dissolved oxygen to be depleted in the oceans, what is now leading to what's called the Bonarelli Extinction event, which possibly resulted in the eradication of both groups, either directly or indirectly. With a loss of two very important members of the food chain, a major gap was formed, and the Adaptations were determined to be the first to capitalize on it, and capitalize they indeed did. The lack of previously abundant predators allowed them to return to the ocean for good, and then rapidly evolved to what eventually became the Mosasaurs. Among many changes, their hands and feet became flippers, their tails became powerful tools of locomotion, and most importantly, they got massive. So huge that it's more likely than not that a new Mosasaurus genus would measure over 4 meters or 12 feet in length, and a few got extremely massive, highlighted by the world record holder for the world's largest mosasaur on display, which is named Bruce, which happens to be a Tylosaurus. And based on his remains, it's believed that he reached 13.1 meters or 43 feet in length. And with the increasing size and overall diversity, the Mosasaurs were able to become one of the top marine predators in approximately just 25 million years, which is a shocking amount of time compared to how long it took marine reptiles to reach a similar status. And by the end of it all, Mosasaurs had over 42 members in their family that all combined had a very strong presence worldwide. However, the substantial size of the average Mosasaur was not the only reason they were able to quickly take over every environment, due to one of their strengths being they had a very wide range of stature, with the smallest one being 1 meter or approximately 3.3 feet. This let them infiltrate just about fill every niche, some of which even included freshwater habitats, as indicated by an 84-million-year-old mosasaur that was located in freshwater sediments. And along with their size range, another key tool was their teeth. Across the group, the teeth are quite different and were quite specialized, meaning that nearly every animal in the ocean was more than likely in their sights. Larger mosasaurs had sharp and robust teeth for taking down bigger prey, allowing them to become apex predators, while smaller mosasaurs had teeth better suited for smaller creatures. And a few like the Bidens had even more unique teeth because they had blunt and round teeth, an indication that it likely consumed shelled animals by essentially just crushing them. Additionally, another advantage mosasaurs had, which was their jaws, which just so happened to be double hinged and extremely flexible, letting them swallow most of the prey nearly whole, very similar to a snake. And a few more mosasaurs had even more adapted jaws. Well, technically more so snouts. And this one goes for the Tylosaurus, which had an upper snout that was very bony and void of teeth, leaving paleontologists to believe that it used its head somewhat like a battering ram to batter both prey and other carnivores. All these new evolutionary traits, which all started from just a plain aquatic lizard, made the Mosasaurus almost unstoppable. And their influence was so intense at the end of the Cretaceous that occasionally when a member entered a new environment, a turnover in the fauna would occur. And for the last 20 million years of the Cretaceous, Mosasaurus was practically the ruler of the seas and oceans. And it actually appears that they only got stronger as time progressed, as during their very final days, many of the largest members in this family to have ever lived coexisted with each other, well, for the most part. But the species that coexisted with each other include Mosasaurus, Tylosaurus, and Prognathodon, a true travesty for all the other ocean dwellers. And at this point, they were almost more numerous and widespread than even the Tyrannosaurus Rex. But sadly, just as sudden as their reign started, it ended, and to add insult to injury, their fall from grace was accompanied by two ironies, because two things that helped them to become kings ended up coming full circle. For starters, just as an extinction had originally helped them, a sudden extinction event in the form of a giant asteroid did, well, quite the opposite of helping. In a matter of seconds, it would have killed scores of them, and the rest quickly succumbed to its effects, as no Mosasaurus has been found past the Cretaceous boundary. However, during the collision, the second irony was found, particularly in their size. The large sizes of certain Mosasaurs had allowed them to become apex predators, but their massive structures ended up being a downfall in the KT extinction event, mainly having to do with the fact that larger animals had a harder time coping, highlighted by the fact that no tetrapod over 55 pounds or 25 kilograms survived. And sadly for the Mosasaurs, none of the living members at that time were even close to that weight threshold, and thus their sudden rise to fame ended just as abruptly as it started. And that concludes the evolution on the Mosasaurus, at least what we know so far, up until perhaps more discoveries are made, because there is massive gaps in the fossil lineage, making this animal somewhat of a mystery. But what we know about this amazing animal so far, and the fact that part of this is still a big mystery, which is why personally this is one of my favorite animals from the Cretaceous, and I think it would have been very interesting to see what they could have become if their time frame on Earth wasn't cut so short. However, considering the fact that it took a very short amount of time for them to basically turn into literal sea monsters, it's more than likely beneficial for us that they no longer exist and did go extinct. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video today, and if you enjoyed the fun facts in the project today, be sure to smash that like button as hard as the asteroid did, I do say. And if you just so happen to be new here today, be sure to hit that subscribe button, I say, so you don't miss part 3 of the Mosasaur soon heading your way. And also be sure to comment below what you think of the project today, and be sure to share with your dinosaur-loving friends. But anyway, it's time for the build rundown today on a Jurassic World Rebirth Mosasaurus, I say. So during part 1, we made the stop-motion Mosasaurus skeleton, which was made out of aluminum armature wire, tinfoil, and oven-baked clay. So before we could add clay to this skeleton today, we had to make sure that the skull was well painted because, well, it's a lot easier to do that before you start adding plasticine clay. Which then brings me to the second and third steps of this video, which was basically adding a base coat of plasticine clay, which was the gray, then adding in some more accurate colors for the Rebirth Mosasaurus, you could say, which basically involved counter shading in a very odd tinted green. And I have to admit, it did take me some time to kind of mix up that color that the Rebirth Mosasaurus color was. It's very odd. But basically with the white and green layers of clay, I was able to bulk up this sculpture today, essentially adding in all the muscles, you could say. But stay tuned for part 3, I say, where we'll be finishing this sculpture, I do say. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end of the video. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if anything. Anyway, that's enough from me. Till next time, take it easy.